Mr. Speaker, the fact that he can't go beyond that one narrow rejection and talk about the other forms of restrictions on free speech is very telling. We're not just talking about the independence of the press, we're talking about every single Canadian's right to have free speech online. This report is also proposing codes of conduct and letting government determine, quote, trusted content. Now, when the Minister of Heritage can't even be trusted to get his answers straight, why would Canadians want him to tell them which sites can be trusted?
The Honourable Minister of Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, we welcome the recommendations from this independent panel, and I will be happy to sit with members of the opposition to look at the bill that we will put on the table in the very near future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Now, Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister said something in this House that simply was not true. He said that in the TMX case, the courts had ruled that free, prior, and informed consent did not constitute a veto. They did no such thing. The court ruled that the duty to consult did not grant a veto. Now, a United Nations declaration that this government is planning on proposing will in fact require free, prior, and informed consent and will give one group that does not want to proceed with a project an effective veto. So, will the Liberals abandon their plans to implement this UN resolution?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I was honoured to receive in my mandate letter from the Prime Minister the task of implementing UNDRIP into our Canadian law. One of our priorities, therefore, is to introduce co-develop legislation to implement UNDRIP by the end of 2020. Mr. Speaker, we will be engaging with Canadians, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, and working in partnership, in particular with Indigenous peoples, to make the declaration a reality in Canada as a framework for reconciliation.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the court ruling was very clear. The dozens and dozens of First Nations community who supported this project have a right to see it proceed. And it is this government's plan to implement a United Nations resolution that would require free, prior, and informed consent from every single group. So can the minister explain what happens if one of those communities withholds their consent?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, implementing UNDRIP is a priority for this government. Free, prior, and informed consent is, Mr. Speaker, one of the key provisions of that. I would ask, Mr. Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition look at what's happened with Bill 41 in British Columbia with an implementation of UNDRIP, and in which free, prior, and informed consent is not considered to be a veto.